Welcome back, everybody. This will be part 2 of how I built my cargo bomb for the Acme bomber. Now, like I said previously, I just have a bunch of photos and short little video clips that I'll go through. This one here is just showing the skin wrapped around the bulkheads and clecoed together. Now, when I clecoed the two bulkheads to the skin, I stood it up vertical on a workbench, and since I'm using solid rivets, I couldn't squeeze them with a squeezer, so I had to buck them with a rivet gun and a bucking bar. So I only filmed me riveting one just to prove that I did it, because it's really boring for you to watch me rivet all of them. With the body done and riveted, it was time to make the tail cone. Now, I'm sure all of you that are watching this think I'm the world's smartest, most handsome airplane builder in the world, but that is just not true, at least the smartest part. So there is a mathematical formula to make a cone like this. There's also an app that you can use to type in some coordinates and make a cone like this. And what the app wants to know is the diameter, the outside diameter, the inside diameter, and the length. And then it spits out the measurements for this. So what I did was I had a big piece of paper, and you get a center point here, and it gives you the length of the arc to make, and you can draw one of these out. Now, the thing I had to remember, and I'm surprised I did, but I did remember, is this will give you the exact measurement to make a cone like this. But actually like this, right? It's gonna be exactly what you need. But you have to remember, you have to rivet this together. So what I did is I added a 1/2 inch to one side. So what that does is it gives me a 1/2 inch overlap like this, where I could rivet the cone together. Now, of course, I wanted that rivet line on the bottom where you really couldn't see it, and that is the bottom of the cone where it is riveted together. So now I had the body of the bomb riveted. I have the cone, I think it's riveted to the body here. And in this picture here, I was gonna post this on Facebook a while ago and tell everybody I was making a jet engine for the bottom of the airplane. Kind of like the air show airplanes that have like the biplanes that put jet engines on the bottom. So I was gonna try to trick everybody and post that, but I kind of didn't want anybody to see what I was doing, so I didn't do it. And this is just a quick little video I took of the body and the cone riveted together. Now it's ready for the tail pieces. So here's the fins, and I just kind of drew these out on paper again and cut them out of aluminum. And I took these L angles and cut them to size and mounted them on the bottom. And I did have to spread those L angles apart a little bit to account for them mounting on a curved surface. There's 4 identical pieces that go between the fins, so I just drew those out on paper again, made a template, cut them out of aluminum, and bent each edge up 45 degrees. You know, I just want to stop for a minute and say that I know there are some builders out there with multi-million-dollar machine shops and IQs of about 400 and tons of experience in CAD and everything else. But if you notice, there's no special equipment that I've used to either design or build this bomb. The only equipment I've used is a bending brake, which you'll see coming up here in a minute, a bandsaw to cut the aluminum, a file, a drill, and some riveting equipment. If you don't even have riveting equipment, you can use all pulled rivets. It doesn't really matter. So my point is, don't think you have to have a huge amount of equipment or an engineering degree to build something like this. To make the door, I didn't want to use just a flat piece of aluminum. I wanted it to have the shape of the bomb. So I made a little rib here with some tabs that hold the door, the skin of the door to the ribs. And then you can see here, once it's open, it retains the shape of the bomb. This is the first out of 3 doors that I made for this bomb. Now the first door here, you can see I've painted it and installed it. I thought everything was good. But what happened was, I don't remember why, but when I put the hinge pin in here and the bottom here, this is the bottom of the door, and this is the top. When I actually put it on the bomb, This hinge didn't line up perfectly with the other hinge, and it was very, very difficult to get that the pin in there. And I didn't want it that hard to take in and out. But it's a little hard to change once the door is completely done. So what I did was I made a second door, and I have on the inside here this piece of aluminum that I made. It's just an arc, and I have these little tabs right here. I made a whole bunch of these, 14 of them. And what they do is they get riveted to the door and then riveted to here. And then when they're all installed, you can see how this little rib kind of holds the curve of the door like that. So this was a lot of work to make. So since I was making a new door, I figured instead of making all new clips and new ribs, I'll just drill out the rivets here and then use these ones for the second door. And that's what I did. So I went on to the second door. I reused the same pieces here. And again, what I did was I just made a paper template for these before I cut them out. So I made the second door, and I don't really recall what was wrong with the second door, but the second door didn't close properly. Or it might have closed properly, but I don't think it was really sitting flush with the rest of the bomb. I don't remember. So I decided to make a third door. Now this is the third and final door that I made. And it is just a piece of 16,000 skin. And you can see I have the ribs. And these are thicker ribs. And then also, if I can get it in the light here, you can see these little tabs that I made. They go around there and just rivet and hold it together. And then this is in a thicker L angle. It's just an angle. It's 16th inch thick angle, and that's what kind of gives it some strength. And that's what all there's 4 of them on the bomb. There's 2 on the floor and 2 up top here where the rivets are. And that's what gives it its strength. In fact, you can see there's the bulkhead, kind of the stringer, the skin, and then the aft bulkhead. But talking about the door here, I made all new tabs, new ribs, a new skin, and then when I put it together, it worked perfect. It really closed up nicely on this one. But let me show you the effort I put into making all these pieces. To make all these tabs, I cut a piece of aluminum to the size that I wanted them. And you can see here how I drew on there each tab. I marked the location of the holes. So everything was marked and ready. I just had to cut them out. But before I cut them out, I drilled all of the holes just because it was easier to do when it's one piece instead of little tiny pieces. And I used a washer to trace around each side of it just to make a nice curved edge so it looks nice. And here's all 14 of them laid out and ready. Now the way I made these after I cut them out was I just took them over to a bending brake and I bent each one of them. Now if you don't have a tool like a bending brake, you can certainly use a vise or something like that, but since I have this nice brake, that's what I use to bend all 14 of these little tabs. Now I used those tabs on the first 2 doors, but when I made my third door, I started completely over again. In fact, I even made new templates for these ribs, and that's why it conforms so nice to the bomb now. But instead of using those pieces, I used the same 16th inch angle here, and I just cut them up, and you can see I rounded the corners, drilled the holes, and I used those. So I just wanted something a little bit thicker and stiffer than the other ones that I made. So all of these were brand new, so I had to make 14 new ones, and then 2 new ribs. This is just a photo I took of the bomb in the paint booth getting primer. Well, it looks like we've reached our time limit again on part 2, so I guess this is going to go into part 3. That is going to be how I scratch built and fiberglassed the nose cone for the bomb. Now, that was a lot of work I don't really want to do again. In the meantime, don't forget to visit Kitplane Enthusiast, where we sell very nice fairings, fuel lines, oil lines, seats, stickers, placards, all kinds of cool products for the Zenith aircraft. We'll see you again on part 3.